It's a funny thing looking back at the release of Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet, and already this movie has caused a firestorm around the country, with some advanced reviews calling it a masterpiece and others calling it sick and depraved, and still others calling it a sick, depraved masterpiece.
Do you think you're a genius or a really sick person?
Well, Valerie, I don't know.
With how much film has evolved, I think it's incredibly easy for us to forget just how shocking Blue Velvet was when it first released. Opening with white picket fences and blue skies, David immediately disarms the audience with images of the seemingly idyllic town of Lumberton, but buried beneath its bright surface is a great darkness.
This is what films for me are all about. There's a surface of life, and this is the tip of the iceberg, and then there's so much beneath the surface, and that's the interesting bits. You can never tell. You can't judge a book by the cover.
After directing The Elephant Man and Dune, both of which were adaptations of existing material, Blue Velvet saw David regain full creative freedom and return to a more personal style of storytelling that he initially established with Eraserhead.
Am I putting autobiographical things in where they don't belong, or are they there?
They're there. I started out in the Northwest in one of the most happy childhoods you can imagine. It was picket fences and blue skies. And so things became a contrast to me, other things, Philadelphia in particular.
Blue Velvet takes us on a surreal trip through David's mind, as well as offering us a rare glimpse into his life.
Philadelphia, when I lived there, I can't say now for sure, but it was one of the sickest, most fearful, corrupt, frightening cities I've ever, set foot in, and especially the neighborhoods I was living in. And I guess I, feel the atmosphere of a place, the mood of a place, and it affects me, and I just felt I was living inside an ocean of fear. And I would see, so many things that supported that. And I guess this makes a little network in a person's psyche. And when you do get ideas, they come bobbing up through this network and are altered somewhat, and out comes Eraserhead or Blue Velvet.
You can see how David's childhood and his experiences in Philadelphia inform the town of Lumberton. However, it's not just the location that is personal to David, but the characters as well. Chief among them is Jeffrey Beaumont, played by Kyle MacLachlan, who shares so many parallels to David himself.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty fascinating world, yeah.
It's a strange world, isn't it?
Jeffrey is first introduced after he has to return to Lumberton due to his father's illness. He comes from a world of picket fences and blue skies, is close with his family, and carries an overall sense of innocence.
To me, I grew up in the Northwest in a very, very beautiful world, and a lot of my life has been discovering this strange sickness, and it's got a fascination to me. And I love the idea of going into something and discovering a world and being able to watch it and experience it.
After Jeffrey discovers the ear, he begins to become lost in a world that he never knew existed. He's a voyeur, and both he and Sandy are incredibly curious about the mystery surrounding the ear. When investigating, however, Jeffrey is very naive and childish. He doesn't consider where his curiosity will lead him, or what the potential consequences may be.
Jeffrey, what? Jeffrey, nothing.
There's something childish about David. Dark and strange, but childish, naive. And he's very endearing.
Why is there so much trouble in this world?
The longer Jeffrey stays in this world of darkness, the more he begins to realise why people like Frank exist. The innocence he once possessed is slowly eaten away, and a once positive bright light is snuffed out and turned to darkness.
Oh, it's dark. Dennis has got a reputation. Dennis used to take a lot of drugs and drink a lot of, alcohol.
I was drinking about 28 beers a day and about a half a gallon of rum with a fifth of rum on the side just in case I, didn't have any in the morning. Well, I just came out of rehab for drugs and alcohol, so I didn't really have a career.
Well, I'd really never met David Lynch, and he cast me, and I'd read the part. I mean, and I called him in North Carolina.
Dennis called me, and he said, I have to play Frank Booth because I am Frank Booth. He called me up.
And said, I'm Frank.
That was good news and bad news, yeah.
What was the bad news?
The bad news was I had to work with this guy. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know.
Oh, you were saying.
Blue Velvet features many great characters, but out of them all, Frank Booth played by Dennis Hopper is easily the most memorable and impactful. Psychopathic, sadistic, volatile and at times hilarious, Frank Booth is rightfully considered one of the all-time great villains of cinema.
You know, Frank is a guy who is driven. All the characters are driven in various directions, but Frank loves his work, and Frank is a lover. He's filled with love, and it's just a hair twisted.
As Dennis Hopper said, he is Frank Booth, and it's a role he was born to play. You couldn't imagine any other actor playing the role, and Hopper's performance here was critical in reviving his career.
Dennis is an incredible person and an incredible actor, and he's definitely on the comeback trail. And he's in 4 pictures this year, but I think that his character Frank is, people say, the best thing he's ever done. It's phenomenal. He's just such a character.
If Frank Booth is Blue Velvet's most memorable character, Dorothy Valance, played by Isabella Rossellini, was the most controversial, particularly when the film was initially released.
But he asks Isabella Rossellini in this movie to be undressed and humiliated on the screen, as few actresses ever have been. Then he tries to take the edge off her shocking scenes by turning the whole thing into some kind of a joke.
Blue Velvet's explicit content was a problem for many critics of the time, including Roger Ebert, whose criticism in particular has aged rather poorly.
And that's painful to me, to see a woman treated like that, and I want to know that if I'm feeling that pain, it's for a reason that the movie has other than simply to cause pain to her.
The scenes in which Dorothy is undressed are never there to humiliate her, but rather to make us feel sympathetic towards her character.
Dorothy Valance, the character I play, is a nightclub singer,
Yes.
and she hides behind her beauty. She's all made up, and she has the perfect hair, and she hides. She makes herself like a doll to hide this devastation.
These scenes are Dorothy at her absolute lowest, when she's unable to hide her suffering behind a mask.
David Lynch has told me that when he was a little boy and was going home with his brother, they saw a naked lady walking in the streets, and they didn't feel titillating. They didn't say, oh, naked lady. They started to cry. They understood that something violent or frightening was happening.
Dorothy was David's first woman in trouble, and anyone familiar with his filmography afterwards knows that David was always sincere and authentic in his portrayals of abuse. In Blue Velvet, David does not turn the matter into a joke. He disarms the audience with humour before serving them with drama, which makes these moments more powerful. The irony is that when David depicted abuse without any humour present at all, such as in Twin Peaks' Fire Walk with Me, critics lambasted the film to a greater degree. In reality, David was always ahead of his time and could never win with critics.
People that are kidnapped, when they come, if they're not killed and they come back, they often suffer of what's called the Stockholm Syndrome, which is they become complice of the people that perpetrate the horror on them. And that's what I shaped my Dorothy Valance.
Well, it's one of the most extraordinary performances.
Another of Blue Velvet's strongest points, like all of David's films, is its use of sound. The work of David alongside Alan Splatt really pulls us into this world and dictates the mood and ambience of the entire film. And then of course we have the soundtrack with the titular Blue Velvet by Bobby Vinton.
When you first heard the song Blue Velvet, what did it do to you?
It didn't conjure up this film. But, you know, there was something about it, this blue and a texture.
And then there's In Dreams by Roy Orbison, which is used in arguably the film's most iconic scene. Mysteries of Love by Julie Cruz, and the always wonderful work of Angelo Badalamenti.
I loved sound effects, like I say, these hard effects, and then effects that got more abstract and bridge a gap between sound effects and music. But I never got into music really until I met Angelo Badalamenti.
My collaborative relationship and friendship with David started in 1986 with the movie Blue Velvet. In those 31 years, we have never had one single harsh word between us. And I'm not kidding you, that's the gospel truth. Though we come from different parents, in our hearts, we're brothers. And I gotta tell you, that's a beautiful thing.
Blue Velvet is one of the most personal films David ever made, and also one of his absolute best. There will never be another David Lynch, and his passing in January is such a profound loss for the world. David meant so much to so many different people, and seeing all these tributes to him has been such a beautiful thing. When I first saw that he'd passed away, it broke my heart and made me cry.
No. There's no launching a career. You know, they call it a film business, but money is the last thing a person should be thinking about in my book. The last thing. You fall in love with ideas, and you get fired up, and you go and you try to translate those ideas into cinema. And it's a beautiful, beautiful journey.
Of course, David will be remembered most for his films, but to me he's much more than just a filmmaker. He had such a positive and happy attitude towards life, and such interesting thoughts on creativity, consciousness and meditation. He had such a love for absurdity, abstractions and the unknown, which resonates with me so much. My mind has been opened up to so many new things because of David and his interviews, and for that I will forever be grateful. With his films, his paintings, his music, his books and his interviews, David has left behind so much of himself that he can never truly disappear. While his body may have died, his consciousness is still out there somewhere.
It's like there's a guy in a very old car, and he kind of drives it down to the junkyard and sits in it for a while, and then gets out of the car and closes the door and walks away. The car is the body.
Right.
But you just keep going.
There is no artist or filmmaker that means more to me than David Lynch. He was the ultimate artist and auteur, and everything I aspire to be as a creative. David was a modern-day Renaissance man who was absolutely fearless with his creations. He always followed his intuition and stayed true to his ideas.
The idea dictates everything. So in all departments of a film, you try to stay true to that original idea.
After Dune, he made sure he always had final cut and creative freedom so that he never had to compromise his integrity or vision. He was such a big dreamer, his Lynchian style so singular and unique. David Lynch made our world a better place, and I can think of nothing more beautiful than that.
Any longing within you to make peace with something?
Yeah, maybe myself.
Yourself?
Yeah.
I wish, no matter what the weather is, I wish for all of you blue skies and golden sunshine internally all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.